So, okay, so let's look at this thing of being an activist for a transformed world. I mean, it seems a rather formidable word, and we think of those sort of people in Myanmar who are standing up against the troops and being shot, or we think of those brave loggers in the rainforest who oppose the forces that are cutting down the trees and they get killed, or we think of those whistleblowers who sort of whistleblow in dangerous places and they get arrested. But so there definitely is a dangerous ingredient to this, but there's also many, 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 many ways where we don't have to be that kind of activist if it's not our own path to be. Because I think we have our own path of where we feel particularly drawn to serve. And it's generally different from the stories that we were told. And in my book, I talk about how we're all conditioned to have a story of how we ought to be. And some of us go through our whole lives and we live the story of how we ought to be. We never discover who we are until perhaps it's too late. And I think when we decide to be an activist, which means that we play an active role in having a transformed planet, we begin to find our own story as opposed to the story that we inherited from our culture. And an important thing is really, how do we live our everyday lives? And some of us think, well, I'm not being an activist because I'm not on the front lines of sort of demonstrating for sort of Black people's rights or Me Too movement. Well, my friends, if you're living an appropriate life, you're trying to not have too great a carbon footprint, you're being kind to your neighbor, you're not consuming, you're living in a gentle way, perhaps you're being much more of an activist than sort of many of you think. So that I call people who begin to live a life that is aligned to the truth of who they are, I think that's a very, very integral part of being an activist. I mean, why is it important at this time? Why are we inspired by, say, those young girls like sort of Greta Thunberg or Malawi, that wonderful girl who was shot by the Taliban because she said that young girls ought to be educated, and she went on to be an activist for education. Why are we touched by these young people? Is because they have a kind of courage, that they're not afraid to stand up for what they believe. And I say this, and I speak for myself, because I think a lot of us are a little scared of standing up for what we believe, for fear people will think we're a bit funny. And the truth is, they will think we're a bit funny. But if we take on their perceptions of us to define how we see ourselves, then we're in a difficult position. And what we need to learn to do is to have our own perceptions of ourselves regarding how, regardless of how others look at us. I mean, when I began my life, I often describe myself as a recovering niceaholic. I was terribly nice to everyone. Why? Because I didn't want to have conflict. I wanted people to like me and say, Serge, you're such a nice chap. So if I was in a conversation with someone and they said something I disagreed with, I wouldn't query them because they might not like me. So you're looking not only at a recovering niceaholic, but a wimp in recovery. And why is it so important that we think about activism, which means being active at this time? Well, it's because our planet, as we all know, is in very bad shape. In my last talk, I went into all, the problems, and we all know them. There's a nuclear problem, there's a climate change problem, there's an inequality problem, there's the rise of more despotic populist figures problem, democracy's on the wane, there's a coronavirus problem, there's a problem in the consciousness of world leaders, there's a problem of poverty and, and starvation. We know this. But the issue is, who's going to change this? God up there? I mean, is God going to come down, as the fundamentalists believe, in a flying saucer and scoop up the chosen people and leave all us miserable sinners to kind of burn in the fires of hell down here? Is God going to come and save us from outside? Or are our world leaders going to come and save us? Or I think, as the QAnon conspiracy people believe, that on the 20th of this month, I think Donald Trump is going to come along on a chariot and save the world. But the fact is, although we'd like to project being saved from outside, like a guru will save us, our partner will save us. There ain't no one going to save us, folks, but us. In other words, we've got the world in our hands. And unless you and I do something, it's going to go on the same way. So who are the change agents? Who are the people? If there's something amiss with our culture, if our old world is declining, and it is, the old order changeth, yielding place to new, as Tennyson said in his great poem of Morte d'Arthur. Who's going to create a new culture? You and I, folks. It's not going to happen from above. But we have excuses because we don't like to have to deal with change. And I wrote down 5 excuses that we have for saying, I can't do anything. One is, I don't want to know what's going on. It's too horrible. I'm not going to read the paper. I'm going to play the part of an ostrich and I'm going to bury my head in the sand. The other excuse is, there's so much that needs to change. What can silly little old me do? So we diminish ourselves. We're too small to do anything. There's so much that needs to be done. So why should we bother? It won't make a change. Or we say things are so far gone, so let's just sort of live it up. You know, there ain't no going back. Here's one that a lot of us use. I'm so busy with my work and family, I don't have time to help. I'm so busy making money, I'm so busy making sure my real estate goes up in value. I don't have time to do all this activist business. And the last one is, well, the problems in the world are due to those evil bankers and politicians. They're going to make the difference. So we play the blame game. And in this way, we opt out of our role of what I feel it is to be a human being, which means to be human. I think that we haven't come in the planet for the reasons that the myths we inherited sort of tell us, so that we can be a big shot and sort of rise up the corporate ladder. I think that the human being, as Buckminster Fuller described us, is a reordering agent. And our role is to play a part in the reordering of our planet. And you know a really interesting thing. Those people who are clients of mine and friends who do something to help the planet be a better place, they're much happier than those who hide away and say, I've just got to deal with me and my children and my job. My wonderful wife, Martina, I live in Mallorca, and our town, Pollença, has had a lot of problems because we rely on tourism. So there's lots of bar owners and, and people who own hotels. They're all going broke. She started an organization called Pollença Cares. Just one woman, a small person. She's not famous. Suddenly, it's grown into an incredible thing. And people are donating lots of money. Interestingly, the most money is coming from those who have least. The very rich are giving less than those who are not very rich, that I think is quite interesting. But suddenly it's grown into a big thing. She's just doing it with women. And she has a wonderful team of sisters who are really working hard, and all sorts of things are happening. They're now opening up a thing to help sort of children sort of going through traumatic, disorders. And just having taken a stand with love in her heart, and she feels great doing this. And it's not a sacrifice. It's not as if, oh, I'm doing this and it means I can't do anything else. It's actually, when we do things to help, it's not going out of our way, but it is our way. And she feels so aligned, and she feels so much helping energy being with her. And that's the point, that if we align ourselves with human evolution, if we align ourselves with the Force, to quote from Star Wars, we'll have a lot of energy behind us to empower us. I'll tell you, I'm getting on now, and I sometimes, just before the pandemic went down, I did 3 weeks retreat in a row, because I do these individualized retreats just with one person or a couple. And you work very hard for a week. And I did 3, one after the other. And we sort of, climbed mountains and we went in nature. I was really given all the energy in the world. I didn't once feel tired. Why? Because I was doing the work I was supposed to do. So it wasn't a sacrifice. It wasn't Serge saying, oh, God, I've got to work with these people. Let's wake up and do. It was, hooray, I'm doing the work I'm supposed to do. And so all the energy is given me. And so I just really want to put it out that if we can find our way of making a difference, aside from living in an appropriate way and working on our own psyches so that we're less sort of neurotic and we give out a healthier energy. What we're doing is we're doing our destiny pattern and we're discovering who we are. My sense is that we can do any amount of inner work to discover our soul. But I say in these times, we discover who we are through doing the work out in the world. That's how we discover. And that is where we touch into our destiny. And I think it's a question also of how much we care and how angry we are at the state of the world. I tell you folks, I'm really angry. I'm so angry at what's happening in Myanmar and these wretched old generals who don't want to lose their pension, sort of killing their own people. I'm so angry at the way that Putin has dealt with Navalny. I'm so angry at what's happening in Singapore, in Hong Kong. I'm so angry at the repressive, tyrannical forces. I'm so angry at the stupidity of so many world leaders who are just sort of money launderers and into power and acquiring huge amounts of money for their own kin. I mean, I was very angry with Trump, and I was so happy that he didn't get in. So allow you to feel angry. We're angry at different things. I have a friend who works at saving elephants. He's really angry about how poachers, kill elephants to use their tusks to make money. I feel that, and I give him a little donation every year, but it's not my main way of working. I'm not someone who feels moved to go out into the fields of Africa, sort of with a rifle to hunt down the poachers, but he does. And the thing is, what we're angry about is connected with what we're going to do. So it's okay to be angry. And I tell you an interesting thing. I've often sort of noticed that people who started organizations to help people, like say, I've got a friend who started an organization to help abused and trafficked women. It's incredible the work she does. Well, guess what? She was an abused and trafficked sort of woman from Africa when she was young. So often where we've been damaged and hurt is where our power lies. So that that we can use our wounds to work for us. And don't be upset and say, I can't do everything, so I won't do anything. I believe that there's a powerful, holistic spirit moving through society and is gathering all the world's servers together so that each of us do our little bit. I can just do my little bit. I don't do anything to help my wife in Poliensa Cares. It's not my thing. I mean, I help her emotionally, you know, and she talks about it and she discusses things with me and I discuss strategies, but I'm not out there, you know, carting sort of oranges to people and sort of handing out food. And, you know, she and her gang, they do that. It's not my thing to do. And she also doesn't come on my lectures because it's not her thing to do. So the thing is, we just need to find what our little dance is to do. And so inner work is connected with outer work, because what I've noticed is that the more I work on myself sort of inwardly to try and have a bit less ego and a little more soul, the more effective my outer work is. And by the same token, the more effective my outer work is, the more it feeds back and it helps me grow interiorly. And so there's a real connection. So in being of service to our world, we're also being of service to ourselves. And also as the whole is the sum of the parts, we're also the whole. And as we're connected to everything, by helping someone, we're helping ourselves. And you know, the most unhappy people in the world are those who just stay in their own little cocoon and say, you know, I've just got to look after me, my lot, and my thing, and I don't mind what happens out in the world. And so we've got to see what really touches us. So I don't think that being an activist, whatever form of activism we choose, I don't think it's doing something that's going out of our way. I think it is our way. It's our true way. And it's not a sacrifice, but not doing anything to help is the sacrifice. Because the more we give, the more the universe gives to us. Now, in all my books, I've just written another book, and it came very quickly that I see as another aspect of service. I've really been aware of a helping, intelligent helping force that's been in my life, all my life. And it's guided me from sort of saving my life when I've had extraordinary diseases, from kind of redirecting me in my ski racing careers when I was about to crash on rocks, and then I would just somehow be sort of moved in the air. I feel there's a helping force. And if we can align to that force, again, it's in Star Wars, the force is with us, the more our lives will grow. And the more abundance that we're going to feel inwardly. Now, in my book, I wrote down 9 specific ways that we can be of service. And you might sort of look and see if sort of any of these sort of touch you. The first is to be a radiator of good vibe energy. If we have a loving heart if we approach our fellow human beings in a kind spirit, our vibes will help lift them and they'll touch the environment around us. You know, the power of a little light in a dark forest is really powerful. And I think that some of the most powerful people I've met are kind of hermits and mystics who seem to be little people, but they're absolutely vast. So never underestimate the power of your heart when it's open and you're being kind to someone. A second way to be of service is to be an initiator. I'm not an initiator, but initiators, they do new projects to bring benefit in the world. They're fighting to bring change into corporate, scientific, and political structures. They're the movers and shakers. I guess, who would be that? I guess Bill Gates is a bit of a mover and shaker. If you don't, and I hope you don't believe in that terrible conspiracy theory that he's trying to take over the world and kill everyone so he can get richer, because, you know, there is that conspiracy theory going on about him. Then there's the infiltrator. The infiltrator is the transformational equivalent of a double agent. They worm their way into old-fashioned organizations, and they subtly try to introduce new ways of looking at the world from within. I used to do consulting with businesses, and I was a bit of an infiltrator. I would turn up with my hair cut and a nice tie and pretend to look respectable, and so they'd trust me. And then as soon as they trusted me, I would sort of get in and kind of, you know, introduce words like consciousness and, you know, and transformation. It would scare them a bit, but, you know, if I did it subtly, I could get away with it. You know, I suspect you, Karina, that you're a bit of an infiltrator in your little way. The proclaimer is a change agent through the power of the word. And Barack Obama is a great example. People voted for him because they believed that he could change the world. The fact that he didn't was beside the point. But the spoken word is powerful. And then there's the investigator. There's some people who investigate. They investigate the dark side of life. They sort of worm their way into organizations, you know, and we saw a lot of those people appearing on CNN News during Trump's regime. You know, they'd sort of discovered more corruption, because what needs to be done in the world, there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of evil. It needs to be seen and brought into the light so people can see it for what it is, because then it can be healed by the power of the light. And when Navalny did that extraordinary drone show of Putin's $billion palace with its own and his own, you know, ice skating rink and his own pole dancing hall, and the ugliness of it, that was a tremendous, you know, service, so that the Russian people could see how corrupt the regime is. And that's where the danger comes. You see, Navalny is someone who's incredibly brave, who's chosen to be an infiltrator and an investigator, and he's taken on evil. Not everyone is strong enough to take on evil. I don't fancy myself taking on evil. I'm not strong enough, and I don't have Navalny's courage. But what I am, and what is also important, is that we can be an activist as an educator. Because I think that the world needs re-educating. We're all educated to believe in a world that is a three-dimensional space-time reality, a materialistic world where nothing exists beyond the five senses. Well, my friends, it does exist. And, you know, in some of my seminars, I've sort of worked and I've shown this, and the world needs to be educated. And a great way that education happens is in movies. I think that one of the great movies was Avatar. Have you seen that? Yeah. You know, it just showed a tribal culture and how the power of those people who lived close to nature could wipe out the materialistic forces. I mean, it was a great movie. And so, you know, some of us are educators. And the last one is that we can be an activist by being a protester. We go out on the streets. There's something powerful about it. It's not just the fact that we're on the street, but like it's a statement of saying, this is what I take a stand for. And I think stand taking is really, really, really important. So that if I believe we need a world with more kindness, it means I, Serge, have to take a stand and be kind to people. There's no point me talking about it. Oh, we need to be kinder and more loving. I actually need to be kinder and more loving. So we need ourselves to live and to be the stand that we want to take for our world. I think that that is one of the most important things, to take a stand for the kind of world we want. And sometimes taking a stand, my friends, means that we stand out. We stand out from the crowd. And we need to have the courage to do that. And the stronger that we get inside ourselves, the easier it is, A, to take a stand, and B, to stand out from people around us. And we can do it in a way that we don't need to make them uncomfortable. How I do it, I work with humor. A lot of people in my old world or the village where I used to live, they think I'm a little bit weird. You know, oh, Serge, he's a bit funny. He doesn't like going sort of hunting, shooting and fishing with all the rest of us. So I kind of make fun of myself a little bit, you know, I say, and so people get to sort of laugh sort of with me, and somehow I can then get ideas through without in a way evoking the opposition, because that is really important. Because it's very important that one never makes people who you disagree with wrong. If you go to the bankers and you take a stand, all bankers are bad people, and I'm going to go up and show these CEOs of the large banks how evil they are. Does that do anything to make them better? If you tell a bad person he's bad, is that going to make him better? You need to find a way of holding the humanity of everyone that we connect with. And even remember that inside a trump, you know, is a frightened little boy who's terrified and who was badly damaged as a child, so that he has very little, you know, conscience, and he's a very ill and depressed and unhappy person whose only thing it is to just sort of, you know, acquire sort of power and status, and without all that, there's nothing. So there's also a place to have compassion. Okay, I think I've said enough about being an activist. But I'm gonna, do you all have a pen and paper? Yeah, okay, good. Just make a few notes of what I've said, and we'll take a 10-minute break and make a few notes, and then come back with some things that you'd like to ask questions about. Okay?